If you have not seen this debate that happened on Rising with Olayemi, Olurin, and Robbie, Soave, about another police incident, we are going to go through part of this tonight. And I want to get your takes on this, how you feel this situation was handled. But for those who are not aware, there was a viral video that went around on Twitter of a young man who is actually the cousin of one of the co-founders of Black Lives Matter. Now, from what I understand, and they're going to go through this, from what I understand, he was in an accident and he was trying to, I guess, flag down the police, go to the police for help. And he's the one that ended up dying in the end, not from gunshots, but from tasing. So let's go ahead and get started. This is it's a heated discussion, and I'll chime in here and there.
The family of Keenan Anderson has filed a $50 million claim against the Los Angeles Police Department on behalf of the deceased man's 5-year-old son. Anderson died on January 3rd after police tased him 6 times in 42 seconds. Anderson is a cousin to Black Lives Matter national co-founder Patrisse Cullors,
Patrisse Cullors, that was his name. That's the co-founder who Kenneth was related to for Black Lives Matter. So he was tased multiple times. And for those who are not aware, some may be wondering, well, how can someone die from that? Look, I know that is the safer form of retaliation if you are, or not retaliation. That's the safer form of defense when you compare it to guns, right? But here's the thing. Not everybody can necessarily tolerate tasing. I've heard also that if you may have like heart conditions, like that may be an issue. There's also this statement here. Some people are saying, and I don't know this for sure, but some people have been saying that he was on drugs or something like that. I don't know. Well, we'll get into it. But tasing is not necessarily safe for everyone. Depending on your health, yes, it can be a problem for people. Plus, he was tased multiple times in a short amount of time. So just keep that in mind. Let's get into it.
LAPD said in a press release that Anderson had been seen running in the middle of the street and exhibiting erratic behavior after flagging an officer down following a car accident. Body camera footage has since been released. Warning, it is disturbing.
Stop it, or I'm gonna tase you. Okay, stop it, or I'm gonna tase you. Stop it, or I'm gonna tase you. Stop resisting. Please. Stop resisting. Please. 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 I'm gonna tase him. I'm gonna tase him. They're trying to kill me. They're trying to kill me.
Let me give a little bit of context here. So the part you haven't seen yet is when, again, like he tried to flag the police down, and then we'll get into, they'll show the video footage, but he was, before this, he was going away from the police. He was running out into walking out towards the road, and they wanted him to get down on his knees, like, et cetera, et cetera. They started tasing him. Notice they started saying, stop resisting. That's all. They love that line, by the way. Stop resisting, stop resisting. But again, I want you to ask yourself, as you listen to this debate, who was he harming at that point in time? This is not someone that was a suspect. It's not like the police were hunting for him. This is someone who asked the police, was trying to get the police to ask, to help them, right? So even if he was walking away, who was he harming at that point in time? And I want you to keep that question in your mind as you listen to this discussion, because was he a harm to someone else at that point in time? Something to think about.
Joining us now to weigh in is movement lawyer and political commentator Olayemi Olurin. Welcome back to the show, Olay.
Thank you for having me, y'all.
So it's worth noting there's a longer version of the video where he's on his knees with his hand behind his head, complying. He says something about how he wants to be seen, and then walks to the middle of the road so that there's more visibility. It seems like he was anticipating on some level an interaction just like this, and being, George Floyded, as it were, as he put it. Can you help us unpack how something like this could have happened?
I mean, I guess there isn't really anything for us to unpack, right? Because it's not an anomaly. This is something that happens all the time. We see this quite literally all the time. LAPD killed 3 different Black men back to back at the top of the year. I know how it happens. Honestly, this is how the police often deal with Black men. His fear made sense to me. Their response, unfortunately, although that makes no sense, I see that very often, so it's routine. So there isn't anything really to unpack because this is the routine thing that we see. We see police murder, police kill a Black person that doesn't need to be killed, and then you immediately see the media start a campaign to justify it. And that's what we're seeing here from Keenan Anderson. Immediately, all of the narrative is, oh, cocaine and cannabis are found in the system as justifications to kill him, or, oh, he's not complying as justifications to kill him. But at no point are we saying that he's dangerous, that he poses a threat to these men, that there's any reason why he needs to be dead. Having cocaine or having weed in your system is not a reason why you need to be dead. It's also not a reason for the cops to act as judge, jury, and executioner. It's also important to remember they didn't know that. So how does that become a justification for why they kill him? Whether or not he's acting erratic or he's not complicit is not a reason to kill him.
That's a really good point there, because that's something that some people have been making that argument mainly on Twitter, that like, oh, well, he was on drugs. Like, how did the police know that? They didn't know that. They didn't have any proof of that at that point in time. Just something to keep in mind.
With all due respect, I strongly disagree, and I do disagree, Briahna, with how you characterize the additional video footage. I don't know if we have it to play it.
You should watch it.
It looks to me like he flees the police. He is told, this part of the video, he's told to kneel down. He does, but then he later gets back up. He runs off. He's in. Everyone can see him. This police officer who is telling him to do stuff is not aggressive with him. Does not treat him aggressively at all. He's running through traffic. I mean, the danger is that he could get hit by a car. He could put someone. He was just in a car crash. He's acting around.
So remember that question I asked you right before we started this clip? That's why I asked that question. Robbie saying he was running out into the road, he's like endangering himself. Was he a danger to anyone else at that point in time? See, this is the question I've started to ask myself whenever I hear about these incidents with police brutality. Like I always go back to that question. Were they a danger to someone else at that time? And there's another one that I'm going to talk about tomorrow, which you may have heard about. This gentleman was beaten to death by the police, Black gentleman, and all the cops were Black that beat him. And I say this again, and I've said it before. Black police officers are blue first and Black second. They protect the badge and they protect that police union. But we'll talk about that tomorrow, but let's go on.
Radically, he did flee the police. They tackle him. I don't disagree with anything the police did at any point in this encounter until I get perhaps they tased him too many times.
Well, that's the bit, Robbie.
Or perhaps when they killed him. That's when you object to when they kill him, but not the actions that lead to them killing him. Robbie, we've had this conversation time and time again, and I don't know how to keep explaining it to you. Fleeing the police is not grounds to be murdered by the police. And
no, it is not. And I want to say something here. They have had these conversations before. When Olayemi was a part of Rising, they've had these discussions before about the police. And what I've noticed is it seems like Robbie always sides with the police, even when it's clear that the police were apparently wrong. It's just something that I've noticed. But let's talk about fleeing from the police. This is another point that I think we really need to drive home. If someone is running away from the cops, they're running away from them, not towards them. If they are running away from the police, they are not a threat. We really need to drive this home, guys, because people always try to use this defense to protect the police state. If someone is fleeing the police officers, they are not a threat to the police. They are running away from you. They are not running towards you. So I don't like it and it's not just Robbie. I see people use this argument on social media multiple times. He was running away, so that's a reason to kill someone? If they're running away from you, they are not a threat. They're not a threat to you. I will continue to say that. Let's go on.
I need for you to stop creating this world and this narrative that police are above us. And so if we don't respond to their every command, if we have fear, if we have any different dynamic at play, it justifies the abuse. Whether or not he was in an accident, whether or not he didn't comply, whether or not he was running, you have yet to articulate where he posed the danger to them. We're killing him. We're tasing him 6 times as necessary. Everything that you're discussing everything that you're saying is something that could be discussed if he were arrested, if he were charged with a crime, if he were alive. They could maybe add resisting arrest or something else. I have a reason, but nothing you're saying justifies why he's dead.
I mean,
why
he did resist. Right? He ran from the police.
Wait a minute. No, he didn't. I'm sorry.
Him being
I'm sorry.
dead.
You can say.
But why is he being arrested in the first place? I don't know. I don't want to live in a state where people think it is acceptable to murder someone because they ran away from the cops.
That it's non-compliant to do what he did, which was to get up after being in the seated, kneeling position
and run away across the street.
No, he announced, "I'm going to the street because I want to be more visible." We have it on tape. He announced, "I'm going into the street because I want to be seen."
He was perfectly visible where he was in the first place.
You don't know that. First of all, he was up against.
I watched the video. No, he was in the middle of the.
He was up against.
There were people watching. There are bystanders in that video who say, "We can see you," etc.
Like I was saying, he was by a building with his back that
was kind of smug. I don't understand this part. Like, this just seemed kind of smug to me.
Because I want to be seen.
He was perfectly visible where he was in the first place.
You don't know that, first of all. He was up against.
I watched the video. No, he was in the middle of the.
He was up against.
There were people watching. There are bystanders in that video who say, "We can see you," etc.
Like,
watch this.
Like I was saying, he was
smug.
By a building with his back kind of next to a building, so you can't get a 360-degree view. Whatever you think of whether he was right or wrong about his visibility, he clearly articulated the reason for why he moved to the street. He did not run into the street. He did not run away. He was clearly not trying to evade arrest. He flagged down the police because he was in a car accident.
Exactly.
Stop trying to project this idea that he's a criminal trying to escape the cops. He's the one that called on the police to be on the scene.
And this is not the first time that something like this has happened. It was about over a year ago. There was a teenage girl in Ohio. I forget the name. This was Akron Police Detail. Teenage girl in Ohio. She called the police because grown women showed up in front of her parents' house ready to fight her. Grown women. These were adults. So she's the one who called the police. The police showed up. And guess who they killed? The girl who called the police. The one who was calling for help. So I think we need to state this again, how important it is that you understand this gentleman, he was the one who reached out to the police. So we've seen this happen before where the person who contacts them, usually when it's a black person who contact the police, they're the ones that are killed by the police. Let's go on.
And
that's
then,
very important.
Whatever you think about whether he should have been more or less compliant, he announced his intentions clearly, moved into.
Sorry, Columbus, Ohio. Columbus. Thank you. That was Columbus. Whoopsie.
The street, kneeled and was on the ground. And at that point, while he was on the ground, we hear him saying, "You're going to George Floyd me. You're going to George Floyd me." The police says, "I'm going to tase you. I'm going to tase you." And the police, they don't tase him once to subdue him. There are multiple men on the scene, it seems, subduing him. They don't tase him once. They don't tase him twice. They tase him 3 times in 45 seconds. And the man, a father, a teacher, a 31-year-old, dies. That's the facts. And if you can't imagine, I'm sorry, Robbie, can you not imagine an alternate fact pattern that would have been geared toward preserving that man's life?
He was already on the ground. Like you guys saw at the beginning of the video, they already had him on the ground. And in my mind, at that point in time, if he's on the ground, he's laying on his stomach, his arms are behind his back, they could have easily just handcuffed him right then and there. I don't understand why they needed to tase him, and not just tase him, but tase him repeatedly. And they like to use this phrase, "stop resisting." They use this phrase even when people aren't resisting. I remember during the George Floyd protests, there was a teen couple. They were actually, I think they were college students driving back from school trying to get home. Now, during the protest, this was in Atlanta, they were not a part of the protest. They were in their car and they were trying to drive home. The police officers opened up the doors, tased these kids, and told them stop resisting. They weren't doing anything. So they like to use this phrase, "stop resisting." That doesn't necessarily mean that they are actually resisting. It's something that they say out loud. So especially if there are people around that are watching this action take place, They can say, well, we said stop resisting. So people will assume that the person that they're about to attack is resisting. But that's a perfect example. Those teenagers that were sitting in that car, they weren't resisting at all. And they tased those kids. Let's go on.
Also,
he got up, he
also,
ran
no.
away from the police. They stopped him multiple times. They said, just sit still.
Robbie.
He did not sit still. They tackled him, then they tased him. It was a long period of non-compliance from him after he just crashed his car on drugs.
Robbie, for the love of God. Okay, first of all, you don't know that.
Why does he keep saying that he was on drugs? Why does that matter? I think Robbie is the libertarian for the show. No? I thought when it comes to something like drugs, like libertarians were totally cool with that. Right? Personal freedom.
And none of that. You don't know how his car crashed. You don't know whether drugs had any role in that. People do cocaine and do weed all day, every day. And I'm sure you know it. I know a lot of people that do cocaine and most of them are prosecutors.
I have no problem with it. I think drugs should be legalized, but you can't drive your car while you're doing it.
What? I think I have no problem with it. If you have no problem with it, then why do you keep saying that he was on drugs?
Robbie, you're so credulous of the police right now. You're the one who's always talking about not believing what the police say. We don't know anything about the levels of drugs in his blood. You don't know anything.
Robbie always has a I'm anti, recognize the problems with the police narrative until we're discussing somebody that was killed by
until I saw the video footage.
Robbie, we had this conversation. Do you remember when we were having the conversation where the police, where they shot the boy that was eating his sandwich in his car in the parking lot, and we had that whole argument, you talking about, oh, well, he was resisting. We need to keep having a conversation about lawful arrest. You cannot say, if we don't know what the grounds are for the lawful arrest, he approached the police. They weren't arresting him. There was no probable cause or anything like that. He approached them for help. So how is it so that he initiates this interaction with them because he needs help? And then somehow his turning away from that situation when he realizes he's being criminalized, when he realizes he's in danger because he wants to be more visible, now that's justification. He's resisting the encounter that he initiated. So now that's justification for that.
What I read is that someone else flagged down the police on his behalf because he crashed his car. Maybe that's wrong. I don't know.
That's the police narrative. See, this is something we have to remember. Kenneth is dead. We don't get to hear his version of the events. What you have right now is the police department narrative. And I will say this multiple times as much as I need to. The police department is not going to tell on theirself. If they do something wrong, if they make a mistake, the police department isn't going to say, yeah, we really messed up. Turns out we probably shouldn't have tried to arrest him in the first place. He was asking us for help. We shouldn't have tased him. He was already on the ground. They're not going to say that. They are going to protect themselves. So this is why when these types of reports come out, this is why I like to wait. Can we get more information? If the person's dead, you can't get that information except if you have like witnesses that were around that can tell more about the accounts. You need more video footage. We need to see the body cam footage, things like that. More of that information needs to come out because, again, you are just going by what the police are telling you. And how many times have the police been wrong? So it's really interesting. This is the third time I've seen Robbie defend the police, knowing damn well that the only version of events that you have is the police department narrative. So why are you so quick to take the police word when you know that there are two sides to a story? Let's go on.
I read
read that.
And I think we have the video, we have the extended video so people can make up their own mind about what happened here. Let's take a look.
Hey, stop right there. Yeah. Get up against the wall. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Get up against the wall. Please, sir, I didn't mean to. Get up against the wall. Get up against the wall real quick. Please. Okay, hold on a second.
Please, sir, I didn't mean to, sir, please.
Hold on, okay?
I'm sorry.
Against the wall. Have a seat against the wall here.
Everybody got to see me, sir.
Have a seat
I don't want to be
over
in
here.
I want people to see me.
Sure. Okay, you can sit right there then. If you want to be seen,
I don't
sit
want
right
to
there.
I don't want to sit right there.
Sit right there if you want to have somebody see you.
Please.
Come here.
Please.
Come here.
Please.
Come here. Now! Get down over there! Turn over on your stomach right now! Turn over on your stomach right now! Turn over!
Yes.
Turn over!
Yes, sir.
Over on your stomach! Get over on your stomach!
Hold on. Okay, please. Please, sir, please don't do this. Please don't do this, sir. Please.
Help me, please!
You know what?
Help me,
Keep my hands
please!
up.
No, please help me! Help me, please! Please!
So the question is, Robbie, him seated on the ground in the middle of the street with at least 2 officers there on the scene. Does it feel necessary to you for them to have tased him at that point?
As I said when we started this segment, I don't disagree with anything the police did up until they started tasing him multiple times. I don't know what police procedure is for how many times you're supposed to use a taser. Maybe tasers are too dangerous and shouldn't be used at all. That would be a conversation. I don't know. The decision, maybe tasering him multiple times was not called for. They had him on the ground. He was wrestling and fighting back with them after, they gave him many outs. If he had stood still, that police officer did not deploy the taser as its first line of action against this person who was, as you could see from that video footage, running through the street.
He wasn't running. I'm sorry.
Robbie,
You can say that he moved. He wasn't running through the street. There's no need to use hyperbole here. I'm sorry, Olay. Go ahead.
Getting into a car accident, whether or not you believe he's the reason for the car accident, people get into car accidents every day that they're at fault for, and that does not arise to a death sentence. That does not justify them being killed. That's one. So whether or not he got into this car accident, whether or not he's to blame, whether or not drugs are in the system, or whether or not he's running or acting erratically, or he's wrestling with them, none of that rose to a threat to those police officers' lives. None of that justifies why he's tased to death. And importantly, we need to stop doing this. You do this thing where it's like, oh, I don't disagree with anything the police did up until they killed him. What we're discussing is them killing him. So either you disagree or you agree with that. But this other discussion of everything before, no, what we're talking about is the fact that they killed this man. He's not alive. And importantly, when you want to discuss a scenario where police they didn't need to use this kind of excessive force. If they had listened to him, if there was compassion for the fact that this man is crying, he's saying, please help me, don't George Floyd me, perhaps they wouldn't tase him 6 times and kill him. But I can only imagine where that lack of compassion comes from when you are watching the video after the fact. They might not even know. They might not have known he would die, but you know he's dead. And you're watching the video still going, oh, well, I don't see any problem with that. And that is a problem because that's how it leads to an environment that fosters why police are able to do this and why we don't actually have the conversations about what shouldn't be allowed, like tasers and this kind of excessive force, because people, unfortunately, Robbie, like you, sit up and justify it.
Yeah, this is a big part of the problem. And this is why people can continue to make this argument. They were running away or they were resisting or they were not compliant, and they'll use those excuses to defend the police state. And it's something that needs to be said. And I think that the question we all still need to ask, why were they trying to arrest him in the first place? If he's the one that was trying to contact them for help, why are they trying to arrest him? I don't know, man.
I saw that from the police, though. I saw that they gave him a lot of leeway for a lot of time. That was not their first action with it. You're acting like they came up to the guy, pulled out their gun and shot him, which I absolutely would have objected to.
No, Robbie, I'm acting like they killed a man who got into an accident. That is what I'm acting like. I'm acting like they killed someone who didn't need to die, who was not armed, who did not pose a threat to them, who was not dangerous to them. And they have never once, no one here, including any of us, have been able to articulate that at any point in time, this man was a threat to them. So why is killing him necessary?
And yet people who do, and someone mentioned it earlier in the chat, people who do these mass shootings, they're taking it if they don't kill themselves first. They're usually taking it alive. Usually taking it. Was Dylan Roof tased? Was he even tased even? One of the things I thought was interesting that Robbie mentioned, he was running out into the street. So Robbie has a problem with the gentleman going out into the street because it could endanger himself. But it was okay for the police officers to tell him to get on the ground in the street and turn on his stomach. I don't know, guys. I don't know.
Robbie, it seems to me like you are agreeing that the force that was used that resulted in this man's death was obviously disproportionate, wrong, and likely illegal. We'll see what happens with this lawsuit.
I don't know if it's illegal or not. I don't know what the protocol for using taser is.
Hold on. You don't know whether or not.
I mean, maybe you know, Olayemi. Can you tell us?
Yeah, it is excessive force. It's very much so excessive force. So regardless, I just want to point this out. When we talk about his death, you don't know whether or not that's illegal. You don't know whether or not the excessive force that we've discussed numerous times is legal, but you do seem to know that he is responsible for this car accident, that cocaine and weed caused that. please stop acting like you have all the facts and you know everything when it comes to vilifying and holding the person that's been killed by the police responsible. But suddenly you need an investigation and you throw your arms up when we're talking about what the police did, which is the subject here, that this man is dead. The police's conduct is who we're discussing, not his.
I'm not.
He's willing to take the police department's word. That's a good point, because he's not willing to look as deep into what the police did.
Vilifying him here.
Robbie,
I don't.
You are,
what do you
Robbie.
make
Yes,
of
you
that?
are.
What do you make of that, Robbie? Do you see some inconsistency between your willingness to be credulous about who was at fault, or to kind of project an assumption about who's at fault for the accident, whether the substances in his system, no matter what amounts they were in, which we still don't know, were responsible for the accident, and whether, frankly, being, even if it's true, being the cause of a car accident qualifies you to be assassinated on the street. I mean, do you think there's a gap?
Well, I mean, Robbie said, what was it, a couple of weeks or so ago, that it was okay for the homeowner that walked outside and shot the 13-year-old boy who was trying to carjack a car, and come to find out days later that wasn't even the homeowner's car. Robbie was totally fine with that. I guess he's okay with people just being vigilantes, like the Green Arrow or Batman or something. I don't know what's happening here. It's really weird to me. I don't think property is more important than someone's life. Regardless of that situation, that's what you're supposed to call the police for. If someone's trying to take your car, and then we found out later on it wasn't even their car. So that's vigilante style. That is dangerous. So there's that. But I feel like that Robbie was vilifying him when he repeatedly said he was on drugs. That's vilifying them. Because you're using that, that's looked at in a bad way, and you continue to use that talking point because that's going to say something about the character. So we see this happen a lot of times, right? In these police brutality situations, what does mainstream media do? The person who was killed, they attack their character. So-and-so was on drugs. So-and-so was a deadbeat dad. Oh, he had been arrested 5 times. None of that has anything to do with the fact that those people were brutalized by the police, murdered by the police. What they did in their past doesn't justify what happened that day on the scene. And so I didn't like it. I don't like it when Robbie just keeps bringing up that point that he was on drugs. So what? You're a libertarian. You're supposed to be cool with that anyway.
Between your credulousness about that stuff, but not credulousness about police behavior?
If you had just showed me the first clip, the clip that takes place last, the clip of the tasering, if you had just showed me that, I would have been pretty outraged that this seems way disproportionate. Oh, he's even saying you're trying to George Floyd me. But then when you show me all the times before that where they treated with him very reasonably and he didn't respond to that, I understand why they felt they needed to restrain him.
Robbie,
maybe they still tased him more times than they are supposed to do, and that they should be held accountable for that.
Listen to your language. Wait a second. Listen to your language. There's what happened and what didn't happen. He did not respond to the police. We saw him. We all 3 sat here and saw him kneeling with his hands on his head in front of a building. At some point he said, I want to be more visible, and got up to go to the street. Now, you can think that that was a wrong decision, but you just characterize that as not complying with the police. And I got to say, Robbie, it seems like you keep overcorrecting to exaggerate what this man did. When I can agree that in an ideal world, he might have been alive if he completely lay flat, supine on the ground the second the police arrived after this car accident. Now, I don't drive. I've never been in a car accident. I don't think it's normal behavior, however, to once you flag down the police after a car accident, to lie down face down on the pavement like you're a criminal. However, I can acknowledge that perhaps in that world where he did that, he might be alive. But that's not the question. The question is the obligation of the citizenry to have such a relationship with a hostile, murderous police force that is the way you have to behave to guarantee that you're not going to die in a situation where you were simply in a traffic accident.
He wanted to be more visible so that more people could see what was happening. So he didn't end up like a George Floyd, but he ended up dying anyway.
I mean, it was his actions that led to that as much as the police actions. If he had...
Rob, but he's the one who contacted the police. Like, this is the part that for me is really, really frustrating. He called for help. He was asking them for help. The people who were supposed to help him killed him. This is not someone who the police were not after him. And even if they were, if you're running away, you are no longer a threat. I don't understand this. I really don't.
He could have kneeled the first, which he did, and then he ran off again. I mean, it's not. I don't think.
I don't understand what's funny about this. I don't think this is laughable. This is killing me. Like, I really don't think this is a joking matter.
I don't have any problem. Viewers are going to have to make up their own minds, I guess. Watching how the police handled him up until the point of the tasing, I don't think most people would disagree that they were would think they were handling that the wrong way. Maybe people feel differently.
I don't think most people like you would have a problem with Robbie, and I think that's very important. Like, let's make that distinction. Most people like you would have a problem with that.
Well,
I don't know what that means.
What do you mean by that, Ola?
He know what that mean. Guys, I think Robbie knows exactly what that means.
I do.
Because this is the conversation we repeatedly have. It's very clear. Robbie never wants to make this position known in the sand. I've come up to talk to y'all about repeated people that have been killed by the police. And I don't know one time Robbie has had sympathy for the person. In every scenario, we start doing this nimble gymnastics and justifying the murder of this person. And never is a conversation about what the police did wrong or a need to justify. Because at the end of the day, you're saying, oh, I don't have a problem if he hadn't done what beforehand. There is no rule of law. The law is not that if you don't comply with the police, if that you resist the police or that you're afraid of the police or you don't follow their protocol the way that they would have it, or you don't subject to being criminalized the moment they choose to criminalize you. Because again, an important distinction is he flagged down the police for help. He was not a criminal they were seeking out additionally.
I mean, you're trying to portray me as a very, there are many examples, there are many videos where I see police, I see police misconduct, and I think it is misconduct because I think the things they ask the people to do are unclear, or there's so many no-knock raids in the middle of the night where the person is disoriented and confused.
So let me clarify.
A lot of examples of me thinking the police are handling things badly, to be clear. One last
question, Robbie. Even if you think that Keenan Anderson did something wrong in his behavior, isn't the evidence of him having been killed with excessive force, it seems 6 tasings in 45 seconds, isn't that evidence that the police also did something wrong? Is that something that you can agree to? That the fact that a man is dead at the end of a traffic incident is not the way the police should be conducting themselves? And there doesn't seem to be a scenario where they should need to use a taser 6 times in 45 seconds on someone who was already on the ground.
Sure, I think I said that.
So okay, that's something I think that's worth acknowledging and emphasizing. That
I would also like to know what the training is with the taser, and maybe what they're recommended to do with the taser is inappropriate if it can result or frequently results, or I don't know what the statistics would be, is likely to cause some kind of grave harm. There should be some policy that you tase someone once, you don't tase them repeatedly. I don't know what they're instructed to do. That would be part of
it's worth asking that question, and perhaps Olayemi, you can come back and talk to us a little.
Oh, Robbie. Oh my God. That was interesting discussion. I'm just always weary when people are very quick to, number one, believe the police, and number two, defend the police at all costs. Very weary of that.